Good afternoon, Philippines. Good morning, Middle East. Maayong adlaw sa akong mga kaigsuunan sa Visayas and Mindanao. So here we are today for another Facebook Live session. I'm Irvin Neil Temporal of 9.09er IELTS, OET, and PTE Review Center. In a short while, Sir Philip will be joining us for our free IELTS and OET Reading Masterclass. So this is going to run for roughly an hour, but depending on your questions and your participation, we are going to extend because we don't want to rush. What we want to do is to provide you with helpful test-taking strategies that will make you pass both IELTS and OET with flying colors. So before we start, I need you to tag your friends, invite them to join our interactive and live Facebook session. So before I'll ask where you guys are from, I just want to mention the following, okay? Number one, in the next few weeks, in the next few months, we are planning to offer one-on-one coaching sessions starting or every Sunday. For those of you who are already enrolled, you know for a fact that we are doing one-on-one coaching sessions from Monday to Saturday from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. But we're thinking maybe some of our reviewees want to have one-on-one coaching sessions on Sunday. So that's one aspect of the review that you might want to look forward to. Number two, I also want to know your opinion. What do you think of one-on-one coaching sessions from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Philippine time? You heard me right, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Philippine time. Konti na lang, magiging 7-11 na ang 9.09er. Now, you might want to ask, why that late? Apparently, we have a lot of reviewees in the Middle East. Guys, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the Middle East, that's like minus 5 hours. It's like 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Middle East time. So let us know what you think about that. What else do we have here? Okay, we're also going to announce the first winner of our February promo. And what is this February promo? Remember, we're going to identify a reviewee who's going to win a full refund of the review fee for IELTS or OET. And then, by the end of the month, we're going to award a free IELTS examination worth 11,300 pesos. We did that last month already, and we're so happy for Joy Bernales Amatosa, who just won 11,300 pesos because that's the worth of the IELTS exam. What else? Okay. We're also going to have a free online class tomorrow via Zoom from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. courtesy of Sir Brian Martin Shawson, our lecturer who got 9 in everything. So 9 in writing, 9 in speaking, 9 overall band score, 9 in listening, 9 in reading. If you want to join that tomorrow evening because you don't have a Valentine's date, but instead you want to focus on your future, why not maximize February 14 by attending Sir Brian's free online class via Zoom? And for the schedule of our free speaking and free writing masterclass. So you'll notice that we're covering the 4 subtests. Last week, Saturday, we're very happy because you shared to your friends and we have reached 170,000 people organic reach because of your participation, and hopefully you're going to do exactly the same for this afternoon's reading masterclass. Go ahead and share it to your friends who might be needing free test-taking strategies. So we're done with listening. Now we're going to have reading. What about speaking? Mark your calendars. That's February 28th. That is a Sunday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Philippine time. And what about the most challenging subtests for both IELTS and OET? Definitely writing, and we have statistics to share later. Why are we fond of statistics? Because personally, I am not a nurse by profession. I am not an English teacher. I have not finished a degree in education, but primarily I am a researcher by profession. So if there is something that I would like to share with you, it's my insights as a researcher. So now you understand why in everything that I do, I always anchor on statistics. And Writing Masterclass, that's March 6th. That's a Saturday. So remember, Feb 28, Speaking Masterclass. Then March 6, that's a Saturday, Writing Masterclass. Totally free of charge. So, now that Sir Philip is here with us, maybe we'd like to hear a word or two from Sir Philip before we officially start our reading. You might want to discuss that instead. Okay, Sir Philip is here, guys.
Hey guys, welcome, and it's good to see you once again. It's good to work with you once again. 9.09 truly is committed to ensuring that you're able to maximize your potential, and we are here to help you with strategies and insights that hopefully you would find useful. Today we're going to be focusing on reading, something that quite a lot of us don't get to do as much as we should. I admit in my own life, I am quite fond of reading, but because of all of the demands of life and adulthood, I don't get to read as much as I could. So for those of you who are challenged by this sub-skill because of lack of practice, I can relate. And I'm sure that everyone else in this chat can too. But today, we're going to be focusing on how to do well in reading in the context of both English exams, for the IELTS on one hand and the OET on the other. Hopefully you would find the next hour or so useful for your preparation. So Irvin?
Okay, so it's time for us to check the locations of our attendees for this afternoon. So last year, we have attendees coming from Metro Manila, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, the Middle East, and the rest of the world. Well, it's very early in the Middle East now, 1 p.m. minus 5 hours. Maybe it's 8 a.m. in the Middle East. Now, let's see. Where are you guys from? Let's take a look. Kindly comment your locations. We'll just wait for the comments to appear because apparently this is Facebook live session and technology sometimes gets in the way. Well, we're reading the greetings of our reviewees, but please let us know where you are from. Oh, my fellow Bisaya, Vania from Bohol. Hi, Rose from Singapore. Okay, Calamba is also represented. Cebu City, maayong hapon kanimo Christina, Kiamko, QC, Metro Manila. Asa naman mga taga Mindanao dire? Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. So why is it that I am Cagayan Valley, that's North, Riyadh, that's Saudi Arabia? You might want to ask, how come I know how to speak in Bisaya? Well, I was born and raised in Davao City. So my mother's side, the Amoreses, are originally from Cebu. That's why I have quite a lot of relationships with the people in Visayas and Mindanao. Okay, KSA, Bulacan, La Union, Quezon City. Maybe let's just read a few more locations in the next minute and then we'll officially start our free reading and IELTS. Reading Masterclass in both IELTS and OET. Al-Ain, Abu Dhabi. There you go. Nelly, Maing Hapon, Davao City. From Bicol. I just can't read the name because the name is in Japanese, I think. Mindanao represent, yes, the Hajjud Basta Bisaya. Guapa. Qatar. So I guess all the major islands are already represented. There's Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and our international community. So first things first, I'll begin by mentioning that reading is a subtest that others can pass on their own. It's just that. There are also people who feel very anxious about the reading subtest. Well, let me begin with a national average so that you get to know where you stand. So, for IELTS, we divide this into two, academic and general training. So first, ask yourself, what band score is required from you? Now, the academic national average as of 2019. So FYI 2020 statistics not yet available. Why? Because 2020 statistics will still be released by mid-year. That's June or July. So if you look at the official website of IELTS, www.ielts.org, the stats that we have now reflect the performance of the Filipino candidates in 2019. The academic national average in the Philippines is 6.8. Is this good news or bad news? Well, better ask yourself, what grade do you need in the reading subtest? If you need lower than 6.8, well, think of it this way. Even if you're below average, you can still pass the reading subtest. It's just that there are people who need 7. Now, imagine if the national average is 6.8, but this is what you need, 7. That means you have to be what? Better than the average Filipino in the reading subtest. What about the general training candidates? Later, I'm going to distinguish the difference between academic and general training. Well, last week, we did not need to make that distinction because academic and general training, well, it's exactly the same for both listening is exactly the same for academic and general training. Now, who are taking general training module? Those applying for fiancé visa, spouse visa, immigrant visa to Canada, Australia, New Zealand. At the same time, the skilled workers are also taking general training module. Now, if you are a teacher bound for UAE or Singapore, it's also the general training that you're supposed to take. So, what is the national average of the Filipinos in reading in 2019? That's 5.7. So, once again, ask yourself, what grade do you need? Is it lower, or rather, is it higher than 5.7? Then you have to be better than the average Filipino. But if you need lower than 5.7, well, the good news for you, you can make it even if you are below average. What about OET? Let's take a look at the stats that we have here. Okay, so since Sir Philip is our OET lecturer, he's going to share with you the national average of Filipinos in OET so that you get to know how well you perform, or you get to know where you find yourself prior to the start of our reading masterclass. So, Sir Philip?
Sir Irvin is correct that data is important in order for us to make informed choices of where to allot our limited time and effort when it comes to preparing for the exam. When it comes to the OET, according to the most recent data, which is from 2018, around 1.6% of the candidatures from the Philippines get an A, which is amazing. 64.5% get a B, which is the vast majority. 9.5% get a C+, whereas 23.9% get a C. Now, unlike in the IELTS, in which the passing grade is dependent on the organization that you're going to be submitting it to, and there's a wide range of acceptable grades from a 4 to a 5 to a 6 to a 7. When it comes to the OET, for quite a lot of the countries, whether you're going to Australia, New Zealand, the UK, or Ireland, it's usually, but not always, a B that is required. The exception, of course, would be Ireland. In Ireland, it is acceptable for you guys to get a C+ in reading as long as you get at least a B in the other subtests, listening, writing, and speaking. But let us assume that you're going to be needing a B in your exam. So what does the data say? The data says that 66%, which is roughly almost 2/3 of the people who take the exam from the Philippines, get the grade that they need. However, please take note that this data are national averages. They are not minimum guarantees. This means that it is important for you to assess where you are right now, because 66% of people getting a B means that quite a lot of people get that, a lot of people get higher, and a lot of people get lower. Where are you? How well do you read in the context of the exam? And that is why it's important for you to use the materials that are available in the OET website, some of the materials when you become a student that we upload in our dashboard, so that you could determine where you are when it comes to your proficiency. It is important, of course, that you work hard, but more importantly, you're supposed to work smart. Some people already get the grades that they need in reading. You're already good from the very beginning. So this means that perhaps you should be allotting less time for the subtest compared to the others. So though the national averages are helpful at the beginning of your review in sort of like managing your expectations, at the end of the day, it is you, the individual who has to take the test. You don't take it together with others. You don't take it with the rest of the country. So this means that your training must be individualized, and you must use data from your own experience to make sounder judgments regarding how to allocate your time. So in OET, 66% of people get a B and above, and the rest get lower than that. Something to keep in mind, perhaps. Back to IELTS.
So, for the benefit of the more than 500 live viewers for this afternoon, we begin by mentioning that if you feel that anxiety is raining down on you, fret not, because in Niner, we cover the entire scope of effective communication in the IELTS. We offer a sublime array of listening, reading, writing, and speaking modules that charter a distinct path of superiority and precision. So what about the reading subtest? Reading, academic versus general training. So academic passages, you're going to encounter 3 in the actual examination. They're quite long, up to 2 pages, and sometimes they reach 1,500 words. Now, this is quite funny because I personally respond to the messages sent to 9.09ers Facebook, and there are people inquiring, 1 minute, what happened?
Excuses for a while.
The ring light.
The ring light has vanished, but hopefully this would be something that you would not mind very much.
I need the other ring light.
Yes, perhaps, no? Well, when it comes to the OET, on the other hand, if I may preempt it, there are 3 parts of the exam. There's Part A, Part B, and Part C. In that one, because the OET is primarily a healthcare focused test, this means that the texts that people would be encountering are, of course, related to healthcare. OET is good for 12 professions, you see: nursing, medicine, dentistry, podiatry, physiotherapy, dietitians, veterinary science, pharmacology, speech, etc. Things like that.
How's the light?
It's good. It's good. However, the text, the guarantee of OET is that the texts that you would be encountering would be accessible for all of the 12 professions. So it doesn't really matter which profession you are, but rather you're going to be encountering a wide range of content, of healthcare content that you encounter during work. So there are 3 parts in OET: Part A, Part B, and Part C. In Part A, it lasts for 15 minutes. It's very fast. It's very, very fast, in which you are going to be given 4 short texts, 4 references. These are things that you're not expected to really spend a lot of time on, but rather you're expected to merely read specific information. It's meant to simulate how in the real world, when we're already working, when we're in duty, you don't really spend like an hour reading a textbook, do you? But rather you consult references. For example, drug handbooks or MIMS, in which you scan the text very, very briefly, looking for a specific bit of data. For example, what's the dosage of the metformin that I need to give to a 65-year-old man who's immunocompromised? So you don't memorize that, right? But you look it up. And when you get that piece of information in the real world, you put the reference down, and then you go back to work. So the first part of the OET, Part A, simulates how reading quickly and accurately is a very important part of safe healthcare. This part has 20 points, which is almost half the grade for the exam. You have 15 minutes to read these 4 texts and answer 20 questions, and it's usually very exciting. In the exam, there will be a timer that will be flashed in front of you, so that you would not be caught off guard regarding how much time you have left. The succeeding parts are increasingly more challenging. Part B, on the other hand, talks about you're going to be given extracts, 6 extracts from a wide range of healthcare professions. Sometimes you get work extracts, emails from your supervisor, infection control guidelines maybe, or quality control manuals. things like this, in which you are expected to read no longer for specific information so much, but more for the gist, the main idea. Why did the infections go up in the ward? Was it because the people weren't paying attention to infection control policies? Was it because the antibiotics were expired? Was it because there was poor ventilation? So you're expected to pay attention to a greater range of text. So whereas in part A, you have to pay attention to a word or two, in part B, you're supposed to pay attention to the answer can be found in a sentence or two. So the attention span truly has to expand there. It's even more difficult in part C, which is the most challenging part of the reading test. It has 16 points, and you're going to be given two long texts, extended texts, in which you are confronted with an opinion of a healthcare professional regarding a topic. The research almost always forms part of this, because OET knows that a lot of people do not read research, and therefore, precisely for this reason, it gives you research, because they want to assess how well you're able to manage texts that maybe you're not so familiar with. Maybe it's been a while since you wrote your thesis. Maybe you don't read the literature as often as you should. So OET would like to know how you handle questions related to maybe study designs or all-cause mortality, or things like that. So therefore, one of the more important things for you to do in preparation for reading is reading. It's a skill. You have to do it in order to get it. So it's critical that you are able to expose yourselves to these texts that maybe you wouldn't really in your everyday life, so that you wouldn't be caught off guard in the test. In part A, you're supposed to be writing down your answers, identifying the word that was written down, whereas in parts B and C, it is a matter of shading bubbles. It's A, B, C, D. You're given certain choices, and you're expected to match the keywords of the choice to the keywords in the passage. The great thing about reading in the OET, just like in the IELTS exam, is that the answers are written down. It's a receptive skill. The exam gives you the answer. Nakasulat yung sagot. All you have to do is to pay attention and to match the keywords in the choice to the keywords in the passage. This, I think, is the same when it comes to the IELTS, because reading fundamentally is a receptive skill. This, unlike writing and speaking, which are productive skills, wherein you have to create the answer, in which you have to produce the answer. In reading, that's not the case. So there really is that assurance, that comfort, that the answer is written down. You just have to pay attention to it. So that's what happens in OET. That's the format for OET reading. Part A, Part B, and Part C. Part A lasts for 15 minutes, assessing your ability to read for specific information, whereas Parts B and C last for 45 minutes, which require greater attention, greater ability to handle longer texts. I believe the format for the IELTS is different. Wouldn't you say, Sir Irvin?
Okay. Welcome back. This is Facebook Live, guys. We're not using any PowerPoint presentation. So earlier, as I was rudely interrupted by my ring light, that's why I'm saying welcome back to the OET and IELTS champions. Now, as I was saying, academic reading, 3 passages, relatively long texts, up to 1,500 words, and 2 pages. And this is the funny part. Whenever there are people messaging Niner Facebook or my Facebook in particular, and then they're going to ask, will you please send me the package? So I send them everything, right? The schedule, the review fee, the scores of the lecturers, the inclusions. And then all of a sudden, they're responding, this is too long. And I tell them, but remember the actual examination, the passages that you're going to read are much longer than this. If you are not patient in reading, then what are the chances that you're going to find 40 correct answers in 3 passages of up to 4,500 words. You want to pass the reading subtest? Sir Philip said practice reading as early as now. That's the case for the academic module, but what about the general training candidates? The texts or the passages are relatively shorter. There are 2 short passages, there's 1 long passage, and roughly 750 words. Now, the truth of the matter is general training is always easier than the academic. So this is the question that academic candidates have in mind. So, sir, if general training is easier than the academic, can I take the general training module instead? Well, the answer is no. Why? IELTS is very specific. So you have to ask the embassy, the requiring institution, or the university where you're going to apply for your student visa, which module are they going to require from you? Because in this examination, you cannot take the wrong module. The moment you take the wrong module, you are required to repeat all the 4 subtests in the IELTS. You don't want 11,300 pesos disappear just like that, gone with the wind, simply because you did not ask which module is required from you. That is why, if listening is exactly the same for all IELTS examinees, in reading, there's what we call academic module and general training module. Now, that's the format. What about the points? Okay, 13 to 14 points per passage. So if you do the mathematics, that's 40 points for the entire reading subtest. Now, you might want to ask, so what's the band score equivalence? For those of you who attended last week, I am sure you already have an idea. But for those of you joining for the very first time today, in IELTS, listening and reading band score equivalents are not fixed. Why? The band score equivalents depend on the difficulty of the material. So if the material is easy, what does this mean? The band score equivalents are higher. But if the material is difficult, that's when they adjust the band score equivalents and make it lower. A lot of people need 7. Some people are aiming for 6. So what's the equivalent? Let me show you. Okay. Chanan! This, we're having a great time, okay? Good vibes only. Remember, learning has to be fun. You don't want boring lectures and then you're droopy or asleep in the middle of the sessions. Imagine, your lecturers are not just teachers. Okay, someone called me. This is my phone that I'm using, so I just had to cancel the call, right? So, this is 9.09ers Orange Book. Now, some people are asking, so who wrote that? Well, it's something. I hope that this person who keeps on calling me will stop calling because I am teaching, okay? So, this is 9.09ers Orange Book, which I started to compile in 2006. So what are my qualifications to compile? Well, I am not an English teacher. I am not a nurse, but I finished a degree in BA Communication Research from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with a scholastic standing of magna cum laude from the College of Mass Communication. So I started this, and then there's a module for reading. So by the way, we provide this to our reviewees. You get to see here the band score equivalents, okay? So what is 7 for the academic candidates? 30 to 32. What about 6 for the academic candidates? 24 to 26. If you need higher than that, lower than that, do the math. You can do it in your head, and the band score equivalents are here. What about the general training candidates? 7, it's 34 to 35. What about 6? 30 to 31. So now you're telling me, oh my goodness, why is it that the GT equivalents are much higher? What did I tell you earlier, guys? General training is easier than academic. That's why if the material or the module is easier, they make the band score equivalents higher. But if the material or the module is more difficult, they make it lower. So later on, we're going to talk about the requirement per country. We're going to talk about the band scores required per visa or program. So we're done with the format of IELTS reading and OET reading. We have also talked about the points. What about the time limit? So in IELTS, you're given 1 hour. In OET, Sir Philip, initially, how many minutes for the entire OET exam?
As I mentioned earlier, it's 1 hour long. Part A lasts for 15 minutes, whereas parts B and C last a combined 45 minutes. After the first 15 minutes, part A is collected from you. So you're not allowed to go back to this material because that would defeat the purpose of checking how well you read under time pressure. And then after the first 15 minutes, you're given the materials for parts B and C. So a grand total of 1 hour for reading, just like in the IELTS exam.
Okay, so let's talk about time management. Let's do the math, guys. In IELTS, you're given 10 extra minutes by the test supervisor to transfer your answers. However, in IELTS paper-based examination, no extra 10 minutes to transfer your answers. So what is it that you're required to do in 1 hour? You have to read plus answer and transfer your answers. And this is exactly the reason why 9.09er does not recommend that you're going to allot 20 minutes per passage. So where did I get the 20 minutes from? 60 divided by 3, that's 20 minutes per passage. No, that's not what we recommend. Because if you're going to do this one, number one, you won't have enough time to review your work. And number two, to transfer your answers. So what is the suggestion of 9.09er? 15 minutes per passage so that the remaining 15 minutes, you can utilize this one in reviewing your work and transferring your answers. Now, let's go to let's talk about this in detail. One passage, remember, 13 to 14 points. Imagine, if we want you to spend 15 minutes in looking for 13 to 14 points, then it is a logical suggestion, a reasonable recommendation if you don't spend more than 1 minute in answering a difficult question. Now, this is when audience participation enters the picture. Get ready with your fingers because I am going to ask. In IELTS, are difficult questions more important than easy questions? So what are your answers? Yes, or what are the possible answers? Yes or no. Let me just repeat that one. In IELTS reading, are difficult questions more important than easy questions? Yes or no? Do we have the answers? Well, someone said yes, someone said no. What about the others? Yes. No. Class, this is exactly the reason why we are doing this free masterclass. Because a lot of people are misinformed. The answer is no. Difficult questions are not necessarily more important than easy questions. You're going to ask, why, sir? What's the explanation for that? Imagine, easy questions, if your answer is right to an easy question, you get 1 point for that. If your answer is right for a difficult question, you also get 1 point for that. Imagine, regardless of the difficulty of the question, you're going to get exactly the same point. Now, imagine this one. What if you're spending 5 minutes of your time trying to answer a difficult question? If I were you, stop doing that. Why? You could have used that 5 minutes in answering 5 other easier questions. So imagine, you've wasted 5 minutes of your time answering a difficult question, and yet your answer is wrong. Remember, they have equal bearing, equal weight. So if I were you, do it this way. The moment you feel you're spending so much time in answering one question, stop doing that. You answer the question using gut feel, what you think is right. You answer it, put an asterisk mark, meaning to say you're unsure, you go back to this later on. But guys, I hope that you won't write an asterisk mark on all 40 items because it defeats the purpose of writing an asterisk mark if all of them have exactly the same mark. So, going back, one passage, 13 to 14 points, spend roughly 15 minutes for that. So 15 minutes times 3, 45 minutes in reading the passage, in answering the questions, and the remaining 15 minutes, that's what we recommend that you're going to use for reviewing your work and transferring your answers. Class, that is for paper-based IELTS because you're going to transfer. But what about the case of computer-delivered IELTS? By the way, gaining popularity worldwide. Let's first talk about the situation in the Philippines. So, If you are in the Philippines, computer-delivered IELTS so far is offered in 3 main locations. There's Metro Manila. So IDP conducts computer-delivered IELTS in Ortigas, whereas British Council conducts computer-delivered exam in BGC. Computer-delivered IELTS also available in Baguio and Cebu. Now, if you are from other parts of the Philippines, it's already in the pipeline of IDP and British Council to bring you computer-delivered IELTS. Well, if you live in other parts of the Philippines, there are approximately 20 key cities where paper-based IELTS is being conducted from time to time. So what's the big difference between paper-based and computer-delivered IELTS? For computer-delivered IELTS, you don't use Mongol number 2. Class, you're not provided with a test booklet. So what is it that you're going to use? A computer monitor. Class, it's divided into 2. Left side of the screen, right side of the screen. By the way, this is mirrored. So this is my left and this is my right, okay? You might be thinking, ba't hindi alam ng baklang to? Nasaan ang left and right? This is mirrored, okay? So, going back, left-hand side portion of the screen, there you're going to find the passage. Right-hand side portion of the screen, you're going to find the questions. Now, one challenge in paper-based IELTS, flip-flopping of pages. And for some people, that might be distracting. But since there are no pages, no test booklet in computer-delivered IELTS, what are you allowed to do? You can scroll up, scroll down, and what you can actually do is to put side by side the exact portion in the passage that contains the answer vis-a-vis the question. I need to move it this way so that you can see my hand and my fingers. Class, that's how it's done. So for pen and paper IELTS, how are you supposed to highlight the keywords? You use Mongol number 2. But since you're not provided with any writing material in computer-delivered IELTS, how are you going to highlight the keywords in the passage? That's when you use your computer mouse to highlight. Now, here's an interesting feature for people who have poor eyesight like me and Sir Philip right here. That's why I hope you understand why I have to squint from time to time because my eye grade is 375 whereas Sir Philip's eye grade is
209.
290. Guys, if you're taking pen and paper IELTS, you have no choice, but you have to use your glasses or your contact lenses. However, if you are taking computer-delivered IELTS, what's the benefit? You can adjust the font size. Class, you can even adjust the font color. You want to make it pink? Go ahead. No one is going to stop you from making the passage pink in computer-delivered IELTS. So now, I hope that this will help you in deciding, should I go for paper-based IELTS? Should I go for computer-delivered IELTS? FYI, they use exactly the same material. It's just that, where are you taking the test? Is it in front of a computer or are you using a test booklet? So the decision is yours and yours alone. We're not going to recommend a specific type of IELTS just because we find this easier. No, the recommendation of a niner is you ask yourself, are you familiar with a QWERTY keyboard? You want to use a monitor, then go for a computer-delivered exam. But if you're the traditional person like me, I prefer to have a paper with me, then I'll go for paper-based IELTS. So far, I have discussed the differences between academic and general training, plus computer-delivered IELTS versus pen and paper IELTS. I have also mentioned the time. What else do we have here? Okay, the passing score per destination, passing score per visa. By the way, guys, we're going to share this on our Facebook page after. So, if you want, you can leave anytime. You can go back to this because it's going to be shared in our Facebook page anyway. But if you want to participate in the discussion live and interactive, you can ask us questions. We can respond to you real time. Don't forget to get your pen and paper because remember, when you take notes, there is a tendency for you not to forget it because you have a reference. Unlike when you're just listening, well, even the perfect humans, even the geniuses have the tendency to forget. So pen and paper will help you in facilitating the absorption of information. So now, I'm going to turn you over to Sir Philip for the passing score in OET per country and per visa. Here we go, Sir Philip.
As I mentioned earlier, for the vast majority of the countries that OET is accepted, where OET is accepted, what they require for reading is a B. For Australia, it's a B. For the UK, it's a B. For Ireland, it's a B. For the UK, it's a B. The only exception to that is Ireland. As mentioned earlier, in Ireland, you can get a C plus in one subtest as long as you get at least a B in the remaining subtests. For example, you are allowed to get a C plus in reading as long as your listening, writing, and speaking are at least a B. So, however, when we examine the statistics, it's not really reading where the vast majority of people have difficulty in. In fact, 66% of the people who take the exam from the Philippines get a B or higher, but rather it's really writing. That's the challenge. So therefore, if you plan to get a C plus in Ireland, it would be best for you to make it in writing. So this means that for everyone taking the OET, a B in reading would be a pretty good idea, if not the grade that is required of you. And this is the case for everyone. However, in some locations in the United States, there are, I think, 2 states that already accept the OET. There's America is a little bit late in joining the bandwagon of recognizing what a very good English exam the OET is for healthcare professionals. I believe they're in the midst of finalizing their regulations regarding this. But the vast majority of people who take the OET are actually currently not headed there yet. So maybe we could wait for the various states in America to get their act together. But for now, it's a B for reading when it comes to the OET. So, Irvin?
Okay, let's talk about the IELTS. For those of you who do not know yet, IELTS is more recognized than OET. Now, I'm not saying that IELTS is our recommended English examination. What we're saying is IELTS has more recognition as compared to OET, because if you are not a healthcare professional, you cannot take OET. So IELTS is basically for everyone applying for fiancé visa, spouse visa, immigrant visa, working visa, student visa. So apparently the only visa that does not require IELTS is tourist visa. So now we're going to talk about the passing score per visa, per program. Let's begin with fiancé visa and spouse visa. What is the required band score? For most of these countries, they only want you to get 4. 4.0 in IELTS. What's the equivalent of that? Let me go back to my book because my transmutation table is here. So what is 4? That's roughly 15 to 18 over 40 with more mistakes than correct answers. You are assured of your fiancé visa and spouse visa. Ladies and gentlemen, people of the Republic of the Philippines, overseas Filipino community, what is my recommendation? If you know for a fact that reading is not really your strength, instead of reading, look for a fiancé. Look for a spouse, okay? Time to download Tinder. And for our LGBTQ plus A brothers and sisters, Grindr. Okay. There you go. So that's for fiancé visa and spouse visa. All you need is a 4. Here we go. The ha 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 ha. Class, we don't want you to be very stiff, okay? When you're learning, it's supposed to be fun. You can actually get credible, reliable information without feeling too bored. Okay, we are here to enjoy and learn at the same time. So, what about the other visas? Okay, there's student visa, there's immigrant visa, and working visa. Let's talk about student visa. The passing score is usually dependent on the school. Within one school, the required band score varies from one course to another. So, my suggestion, kindly look for a school, a university, or a college that requires a lower band score. This is just to guide you guys, okay? If you're applying for a PhD, most of them require 7.5 to 8. If it's a master's degree, 7 to 7.5, depending on the school, depending on the course. Bachelor's degree, most of the time, 6 to 6.5. If it's diploma course, 5.5 to 6. Well, there are certain schools that tell you you are not required to pass IELTS or PTE when you apply for a visa. But by the time you go there, they will require you to enroll in an English course. Honestly, that's stressful. Why? Because by the time you are there, you're not supposed to be thinking of an English course anymore. Why don't you get it over with while you are still here in the Philippines or someone else take your English test? Well, that is the better suggestion as compared to paying for another expensive English course by the time that you are there. What about working visa and immigrant visa? Class, FYI, not everyone is offered working visa. It depends on the profession. So for working visa, it is best to consult your employer what grade they require from you. But since most of our healthcare workers are applying for working visa, let's begin with the United States of America. What's the good news? If you are an occupational therapist, registered nurse, or medical technologist going to the United States of America, all you have to do is to get a 7 in speaking and 6.5 overall band score, regardless of your grade in the reading subtest. So what do we recommend? It's not the requirement, but more of a recommendation, a 6 in academic reading if you're targeting America. And what is 6 in academic reading? That's 24 to 26. What about the Republic of Ireland? Class, as Sir Philip mentioned earlier, all you have to do is to get B or 7 in 3 subtests, plus 6.5 or C plus in the 4th subtest. But if you look at the statistics, this is how Filipinos perform in IELTS. We usually do best in listening, followed by reading, and then speaking, lastly, writing. So it's in writing where we usually get the lowest band scores. In OET, it's not the case because in OET, Filipinos usually get the highest in speaking, followed by listening, and then reading, lastly, writing. So what is it that you've noticed? Consistently for both English examinations, IELTS and OET, it's in writing that Filipinos usually get the lowest scores. That's why, if you are smart, this is how you're supposed to prepare for OET. You need to target a 7 in listening, reading, and speaking. And then, or if you're preparing for IELTS, rather, 7 in listening, reading, speaking, and a 6.5 in writing. However, if you're going to take OET, C in listening, B in listening, reading, speaking, and then C plus in writing. That's how you're supposed to do it. Now, what about UK? For UK, the requirement is strict for the registered nurses. At least C plus in OET or 6.5 in writing. However, for listening, reading, speaking, B in OET, 7 in IELTS. So, let me go back. What is a 7 for academic candidates? That's 30 to 32, which could go up or down depending on the difficulty of the material. If you're targeting UK, or rather Ireland, to a certain extent, they might accept a 6.5 in reading, which is 27 to 29. Now, what about Australia and New Zealand? If you're a healthcare professional applying for registration in the 2 countries down under, then what do you need? 7 in all subtests. So that's 30 to 32. Now, I'll turn you over to Sir Philip for the equivalence in OET. Like, what's B in OET reading? What is C plus in OET reading? Sir Philip?
When it comes to OET reading, the exam is out of 42. Based on the website, B, which is the requirement that quite a lot of you should be aiming for if you're taking the OET, is usually, but not always, a 30 out of 42. So that's the goal. However, just like in the IELTS exam, in which the band equivalence changes depending on the level of difficulty, the same is true when it comes to OET. Of course, the exam itself, the development of the test, is outsourced by OET, as far as I know, to the University of Melbourne. They spend quite a lot of time and effort in producing a quality exam that is fair for all professions, wherever you take it, whenever you take it. However, despite this long period of development and all the brain power and manpower that is allocated there, they still cannot standardize the level of difficulty before people take the tests. And that is why after people take the test, once people's answers have been gathered and they collate and they make an assessment of how challenging a particular version of the test is. And they factor this into the grades that are given to people. So this means, therefore, that usually, but not always, 30 out of 42 gets you a B. Sometimes, if it's harder than usual, 29 or 28 gets you a B. Sometimes, when it's easier than normal, maybe you need a 31 or a 32 in order to get the grade that you need. It depends. So, since you do not know ahead of time what kind of exam you're going to be given, this means that the only thing under your control is your preparation and how well you review for the exam. At the same time, the fact that these band scores adjust depending on how challenging it is should be very comforting for you, because this means that your performance and your grade is gonna be dependent not on luck or fortune, or it just so happened that you got the hard one, therefore you're gonna fail, or it just so happened that you got the easy one, therefore you're gonna pass. It doesn't work that way. But rather, because the OET, similar to the IELTS, is a test of skill, is a test of English, therefore it is your performance that should be the basis of your grade. And the fact that the band score changes, the raw score that you need in order to get a B adjusts based on the difficulty, this should be very comforting, as I said. And hopefully you keep this in mind as you prepare for your test. Sir Irvin?
Okay, guys, we are done with the format, the points, the band score equivalence, the time management, also the passing score per destination, and visa. Now, we're going to talk about the problems. Why is it that there are a lot of candidates who do not get the required band score? We begin with problem number 1, the length of the passage. Why? A lot of Filipinos are audio-visual. Most Filipinos are not fond of reading. I imagine some of you might want to watch the animated version or the movie version instead of reading the book. Say, for instance, Crazy Rich Asians. Some of you have watched the movie. Majority of you, I assume, have not read the book. Like Harry Potter. There are a lot of books with movies as versions, but we are usually fond of watching and listening as compared to reading. It all starts from there, okay? You have to make sure that you're familiar with how it goes in the actual examination. So problem number 1 is length of the passage. Now guys, here is my initial solution, my initial recommendation. In one passage, remember, for academic candidates, it's up to 1,500 words. Let me check if you are listening. I need you to cooperate and I need your response. Once again, in academic reading, how many points per passage? I told you earlier, up to 1,500 words per passage. But please tell me, how many points per passage? How many answers are we looking for? Let's wait for the responses of our attendees. I'm sure some of you know it. Audience participation is a must. This is supposed to be live and interactive. Okay, Jen, Kyrie, Joe, Taurean, 13 to 14 points. Very good. What's the good news, guys? Even if the passage is long, you only need 13 to 14 points, even if the passage has 1,500 words. What's the good news here? You do not need everything in the passage. In fact, there are more useless details than the relevant information that you need. Which means to say, you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to understand everything that you're reading. And class, what's the advantage? Especially that part that does not contain an answer. So what if you don't understand that part? Because you don't need that. That's not the answer. Guys, what is your objective in reading? Kylie, tell me. What's your objective in reading? Is it to understand everything? Number 2, is it to enjoy what you are reading? Ang saya-saya naman nito. What is your objective in IELTS reading? Answer. This is Facebook Live. We're waiting for the comments to come up. But anyway, let me tell you, your objective in IELTS reading is to find the answers. Which means to say, there are more irrelevant details than the details that you actually need. So later, we're going to teach you techniques on how to look for the correct answers and finish the examination within the given time limits. That's how we deal with the length of the passage. Problem number 2, short attention span. Human as we are mentally preoccupied most of the time. In fact, when we are reading, this is what we do. In the beginning, we're trying to absorb the information. Somewhere along the way, especially if there's no graphic, no drawing, no illustration whatsoever, our mind starts to think of something else. Say for instance, ano oras ba matatapos tong baklang to? Masusunog na yung sinaing ko? Parang uulan sa labas, parang hindi matutuyo yung aking labada. Anong uulamin ko mamayang gabi? Class, we love to think of a lot of things. Physically, we may be present, but mentally, we are absent such that when you realize, wait a minute, I did not understand the paragraph that I have just read. So what do? You go back to the paragraph that you failed to understand. That is why sometimes you don't put the blame on other people if you're not able to get the required band score. You do not blame the review center if you don't get the required band score in reading. Sometimes ask yourself, did you even focus while you're reading the material? Because in here, attention is important. You don't have the luxury of time and keep on going back to the portions that you did not understand simply because you were not too focused when you were reading. Fight short attention span. There's no other way for us to teach you but to remind you that if you are not able to fight short attention span, you'd again spend 11,300 pesos, gone with the wind, disappear just like that because you're not so focused on your examination. Now, that's problem number 2, short attention span. Problem number 1, long passage. Okay, problem number 3, poor comprehension. Let me mention that in IELTS reading, and I suppose this is also the case in OET reading, the words that you find in the passage are not always the same words that you're going to find in the statement. And I tell you, IELTS topics are not really that interesting. Why? They are IELTS topics related to the different birds of London. Number 2, sleeping on the job. Number 3, children's literature. And I tell you, these are boring. Especially if you are not fond of reading. You're not a researcher by profession. In OET, well, you're also going to read lengthy passages, but they focus on your occupation. That's why it's only for healthcare professionals. There might be a passage that focuses on vasectomy. Another passage might talk about coronavirus. Another passage talks about acute glomerulonephritis or chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder or an article that was written by Piliteri, Irvinyl Temporal, RN.
Wow.
Char. Now, let's go back. As I was saying, comprehension is important because you don't always expect to find in the passage the exact words that you get to see in the question. So later, we're going to teach you certain techniques on how to identify keywords and how to have what? A wider vocabulary. Now, time limit. Okay. When I met with Dr. Joanna Motoram and Dr. Vicky, when I went to Shanghai, December 1 to 5, 2017, there's something that I've learned from them. The English of Filipinos isn't really bad. In fact, for some of us, we're better in English than our national language, which is Tagalog. However, there are candidates who cannot pass the examination not because of language proficiency, but because of the time limit. In fact, in the writing subtest, 20% of the Filipinos cannot finish the examination just because 1 hour is not enough for them. So that's something that you might want to think about before you register for the exam. Ask yourself, can I finish the examination within the given time limit? It might not be your reading skill, it might not be your English that will pull you down, but your ability to keep up with the time constraint in the actual exam. So later, I'll talk about tips in dealing with matching headings and true false not given. Meanwhile, I'll ask Sir Philip, what are the usual problems that OET candidates encounter in the reading subtest? Sir Philip?
The problems in OET reading are very similar to the problems in IELTS reading because the problems stem from an unfamiliarity with the act of reading itself. Admittedly, I think you are willing to confess that you don't read as much as you should. And because we're out of practice, kinakalawang tayo, it's not something that you're used to. When it comes to performance time, no? When you're supposed to be reading quite a lot of text in the actual exam, if you did not allot the time and effort before it to catch up on your reading skills, then you're gonna have a very, very difficult time, especially when it comes to OET. The first part of OET, Part A, reading Part A, is very fast. It's 15 minutes long. You have to read 4 references and answer 20 questions about it. A very common mistake is people not finishing because they try to read everything. They attempt to make sense of all of the 4 short texts that are given to them as if they're going to be asked to make a report out of it or to synthesize all of the insights there. That's not the case. If you were paying attention earlier, I mentioned that reading Part A in OET is a matter of paying attention to specific details. It's meant to simulate how in the real world, when you're working, where you're in the middle of duty, for example, you don't know everything. You forget some things sometimes. In fact, you forget things all the time, right? You're not expected to have this trivia, this specific information at the top of your head. And that is why you consult references. The most common reason for people not finishing on time, in not answering all the 20 questions in 15 minutes, they try to read everything. As if in the real world, when you read a MIMS entry, you're trying to look up the dosage for metformin. When you go to the drug entry for metformin in the drug handbook or in MIMS, you're not going to read the indication, the side effects, the adverse effects, the nursing consideration, the pregnancy category, the indication, the contraindication, the brand name, the generic name, the route. You don't read all of that. You're only looking for one specific thing. And when people forget to have that kind of focus, when they read in a way that they're not supposed to be reading, unfortunately, very tragically, they don't finish. And this is quite unfortunate because reading Part A is supposed to be the easiest part of your exam. So when you try it, when you try the practices that are the practice materials that are available in our dashboard or in the OET website, keep that in mind. You're not expected to read everything. Don't try. It's a different thing when it comes to reading parts B and C. In this part of the test, you are expected to perform much deeper analysis. You have 45 minutes to handle 6 extracts and 2 long texts. However, similar to the IELTS exam, a lot of people are not used to reading that long. You're supposed to be reading, right? You're supposed to be reading up on quality control manuals and infection control procedures, updates in your profession, but maybe not as much as you should. And because we're out of practice, because the most common thing that you read maybe are captions in Facebook posts, maybe, or every now and then an article or 2, the sheer length, the sheer amount of material that your brain has to process and go through, if you don't try it ahead of time, may be overwhelming. It requires effort. After all, what organ of the body consumes the most energy? Does anybody know? What organ of the body consumes the most energy? It uses up the most amount of calories. It eats up so much glucose. Which organ of the body is the one that is most expensive when it comes to energy expenditure? The brain. Correct, Abili. No? Matakaw ang brain sa energy. It eats up so much power of yours. And therefore, this amount of brain power that you have to devote to reading, it has to be not only, it makes you tired. It makes you tired. And therefore, if you're not in the habit of reading, that is an additional burden that your brain has to bear, and therefore not a good idea. In addition, as was mentioned earlier, the reading path, the parts in reading in OET are an increasing level of difficulty, not only because the texts become longer, but also because the topics that they talk about become less familiar. In reading part C, for example, almost always OET is going to give you something about research. We all had a thesis, right, before we graduated, at least healthcare professionals. However, maybe it's been a while since you thought about randomized controlled trials, or maybe placebos, or maybe retrospective and prospective studies and snowball effects and things like that. And precisely because OET knows this, they present you with such materials in order to assess how your English is like, how your reading skills are like when confronted with unfamiliar materials. In addition, because OET is good for 12 different professions, and the vast majority of the candidates for OET are nurses. I'm a nurse. We comprise 76% of the candidature in the world, so roughly 3/4 of the candidates are nurses, followed far second by the doctors at around 22%. So this means that OET is going to give materials that are still healthcare related, still accessible, but maybe they belong to the 2% of the professions that are not that take the test. Maybe you would encounter a passage about sports physiotherapy, or maybe about speech pathology, or maybe about animals, veterinary science, things like that. So therefore, this means that though you would encounter jargon and you are a healthcare professional when you're taking OET, maybe it's jargon that you're not so familiar with. And this catches some people off guard because they are quite confident. Oh, I'm a nurse. Oh, I'm a doctor. I know all the jargon. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe not. The good news, though, is that the OET, just like the IELTS, is not a knowledge-based test. It's not a quiz, but rather it's a skills-based test. It's not the PT board exam. It's not the veterinary science board exam, but rather it's a reading exam. So therefore, if you are familiar with how paragraphs are developed, how are arguments supported, what are the grammatical structures, and what are the vocabulary that are used in order to support statements, and therefore the easier time you're going to be having, not for the entire test, for specifically for parts B and C. As Irvin mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about later basic but yet foundational strategies on how to focus your attention, because you're not expected to make a report out of this, you're not expected to enjoy it, but rather you're being asked specific information. Knowing why you're reading in the first place, the purpose of your examination of the text, helps quite a lot, because it narrows your attention and allows you to allocate your limited glucose, your limited energy, your limited motivation to the parts that matter. There's quite a lot of filler in the texts, and therefore being able to identify which parts are actually being asked versus those parts that you can safely ignore is a big part of doing well in the tests, in the OET, and I imagine as well in the IELTS test. Sir Irvin?
Okay, icebreaker, guys. I need you to tell me which type of question you're having a difficulty with. So, there's gap fill, let's fill in the blanks. There's multiple choice. There's matching headings. There's true, false, not given. Please be honest in telling me, when you did your practice tests in IELTS reading or OET reading, which type of question you find challenging and are hoping to ace when you take the test. So, Arlene De Leon responded, oh, it's matching headings. Hi, Caps is me, the head of our OET coaches. Christina, true, false, not given. And Christina is not alone, as Shirley also mentioned. Yes, it's true, false, not given. Meanwhile, Mar said it's multiple choice. Multiple choice, true, false, not given. Okay, since these are the types of questions that you're having problems with, let us begin with matching headings. Class, it's matching time. Paragraphs in IELTS are usually numbered or lettered. You're also going to see a list of headings, and then you're going to match. Now, there are two types of matching headings. The first one, equal number of paragraph, where's my hand? Paragraph and headings. So say, for instance, 7 paragraphs, 7 headings. This is easier. You know why? That's because you're 100% sure that all of the headings are answers. It's just that. IELTS is not a giveaway. There are instances when there are more headings than the paragraphs. Say, for instance, there are only 7 paragraphs, but a total of 10 headings. So you have 3 fillers to make it confusing for the candidate. They are not answers, but they are there to make it a little more challenging for you. Now, what are the 2 techniques in dealing with matching headings? The first one, some people prefer to read the heading first. Identify the keyword, and this is a keyword that they're going to find in the passage. More often than not, the paragraph that discusses this keyword is the partner of the heading. Now, why did I say more often than not? It's not the case all the time, okay? And what's the main challenge here? The keyword in the heading is not exactly the same keyword you will find in the paragraph. Sometimes it's something else. Say, for instance, my favorite example, the word heterogeneity. So say, for instance, that is a keyword in the heading. But when you read the paragraph, they might be using other terms like what? Variety. They might be using diversity. Or sometimes it's not just one word. They might use 2 words like a wide array, a diverse range. That is why I need you to build your vocabulary. The more words you understand, the easier the listening and reading subtests will be. The more words you understand, the higher the probability that you're going to avoid repetition of words in writing and in speaking. So now, that's what others do. They identify the keyword first, and then they look for that keyword in the passage. Now, for some people, this is what they do. I'm giving you 2 possible techniques, and then ask yourself which one you're more comfortable with. It's trial and error. We're not saying this is the best. We don't want to impose. Niner does not do that. We try to bring out the best in you, because at the end of the day, there is no generic IELTS candidate. Some people are more comfortable with this. Some people are happier with that. So ask yourself which one is more effective for you. Now, why can we say that these are effective test-taking strategies? Because I, for one, have been teaching since 2006. That's nearly 15 years, almost half of my life I've devoted for this examination. I took the IELTS twice, 1 academic, 1 general training, 1 in British Council, 1 in IDP. For someone who is not fond of reading, because I'm a talkative person, I'd rather talk and listen than read and write. Still, I got a 9 in reading and 8.5 in reading in my 2 IELTS attempts. So Sir Philip right here is more credible than I am, because he took English exams 3 times. So IELTS Academic, OET version 1, OET version 2. In all 3 attempts, perfect grade in reading. Now, that's not a fluke. That's not an accident. It's because he knows what he's supposed to do and what's the objective: to find the answer, not to enjoy what you are reading, not to understand everything. Precisely because there are details which are just there to make the passage long but are not really answering any question. Now, what others do for matching headings, they read the paragraph first, try to understand what the paragraph is all about, because it's easier for them to pick a corresponding heading now with a better understanding of what the entire paragraph is actually about. Class, this is also the tricky part for matching headings, because there are certain types of matching headings wherein the entire paragraph does not talk about the heading. There's just a portion in the paragraph, like just the first sentence or the last sentence, that talks about the heading. That's why you have to read the instruction. Why? Because for matching headings, there are instructions where it will tell you, look for the paragraph that discusses this information. It does not say what is the appropriate heading for this paragraph. That's why you have to be careful. You know it is matching headings, but you have to understand the instruction, because at the end of the day, you always go back to the instruction because it will tell you what you're supposed to do and what not to do. Now, here we go with the challenging true, false, not given. When you were in high school, or in grade school perhaps, it's very common to encounter true or false. And I tell you before, it's very easy. Why? You're left with only two options. Is the statement consistent with the passage? Oh, the answer is true. However, if the statement is not consistent with the passage, therefore, the answer is false. But in IELTS, why is it so mind-boggling? That's because of the third option, which is not given. And the truth of the matter is, there is a very thin line that separates false and not given, such that you were quite confident when you were doing the practices. Okay, I'm sure this is false. But when you look at the answer key, how come it's not given? Or sometimes you thought it was not given. But when you look at the answer key, the answer is false. Class, that's a problem when you are not properly guided. So here we are. Let's talk about the techniques that will help you in answering true, false, not given. We begin by mentioning, instead of reading the passage first, we need you to read the questions first. Why? It will give you an idea which particular information to pay attention to as compared to the information that you have to disregard. Say, for instance, you read all the questions and then you go to the passage. When you read the first sentence, does it contain any answer? No. So what's the point of trying to understand every detail in the first sentence when it does not contain any answer? Now, how do you know that the first sentence contains an answer? That's the point where you have to read the questions ahead of time. It will help you finish the examination within the given time limit. Now, I have a technique to teach you guys. And yes, I've been doing this for the longest time, and consistently, we're able to produce candidates with 9.0 in reading every test day. So there's a subtle reminder that our techniques are effective. Hello. Like, these are scores of some of our top performers, getting 9 in reading, perfect score in listening, writing, speaking. Anyway, in true, false, not given, believe me when I say that the answers are found chronologically in the passage 99.9% of the time. I'll give you an example. One passage, 1,500 words, first 7 questions, true, false, not given. Where are you supposed to find the answer for true, false, given question number 1? Believe me when I say you'll find it in the first part. I'm not saying first sentence. Clarification. I said first part. It doesn't have to be first paragraph, but it has to be somewhere there. What about number 7? If that's the last of the 7 true, false, not given questions, you'll find the answer to number 7 towards the end. Clarification. I did not say last sentence. I did not say last paragraph. What I said is towards the end. Now, I've been doing this for the longest time, and I've always proven this to be effective. Class, you don't have to read the passage all the way to the last sentence, because it's possible before you reach the last sentence of the paragraph, you have answered all the questions already. So what's my point? Why do you have to continue reading all the way to the last sentence when in fact that sentence does not contain any answer? You're done with all the questions for this passage. Move on to the next passage, because you know what you're supposed to do. Just find the answers in the reading subtest. Now, I'll give you a scenario, okay? What if now you're done reading the 7 questions and it's time for you to read the passage, okay? You're able to find the answer to question number 1 somewhere in the 3rd sentence of the first paragraph. So if I were you, stop reading, go to the question first to answer that before you proceed. Why? Imagine, it's like when you're catching fish. You've waited for quite some time to get a good catch. And then, here you have the fish that you've been waiting for. You're having the time of your life when you're fishing. What are you supposed to do with that fish? Do you let go of it? No, you get that fish, you keep it. You don't want to let go of gold, right? That's exactly what I need you to do. The moment you find an answer, stop doing that. You go to the question and answer the question before you continue reading so that you don't have to think about this portion anymore. Simply, you're done with this portion. You don't go back to it anymore. Now, what if you've answered number 1? That means to say, anytime soon, you're going to find the answer to number 2. So, what if you continue reading and then all of a sudden, you were able to find the answer to number 3. So you stop, go to number 3, you answer that question. But wait a minute, something's fishy. You've answered number 1. Where's number 1? Here. Then you've answered number 3. Guys, how come we're not able to find the answer to number 2? Now, here I am telling you, go back to the passage that contains the answer for number 1 and number 3. In between, read that portion, find the answer to number 2. Because it's possible that you missed the answer for number 2. But what if you, once again, went back to that portion, but you were not able to find the answer to number 2? Now, straight from the horse's mouth, cross my heart, take my word for it. I'll put my credibility and reliability on the line. The answer for number 2 is not given. You do not need to finish the entire passage before you say it's not given. If the answer for number 2 is not found in between 1 and 3, the answer is not given. How come we have candidates getting the perfect grade in the examination in the reading subtest? That's because we know what to tell them. We know what to teach them. We've applied these strategies. Try it on your own. And I guarantee you will have an easier time in the reading subtest if you know where to find the answer. So now, you're done with number 1. You're done with number 3. You went back to the portion in between 1 and 3. You realize that the answer for number 2 is not there. It's not given. So what do? When you continue, try to find the answer for number 4. Then number 5. Then number 6. Then number 7. And I promise, even before you reach the last sentence of the passage, you've answered all 7 questions already. That's one way of dealing with true, false, not given. Sir Philip, do you have anything to add to that? Okay, he has nothing to add to that. Let me continue. Okay? Now, are there questions? Okay, no questions so far. So, let's talk about when do we say the answer is true? When is the answer false? And when is the answer not given? Okay, let's go back to my beloved and legendary orange book. Okay, the answer is true if the passage and the statement might use different words, but are still consistent with each other. And here's the example. Pay attention. The passage tells us students of the same nationality make similar study choices. And I'm emphasizing on the word similar because that's the key word right there. What about the statement? It tells us, in the main, students follow the traditional pattern of study for their national group. But what is it that you'll notice? The word similar, which is the exact word in the passage, you cannot find that in the statement. In fact, in the statement, what words are used? Follow the traditional pattern. That's when comprehension enters the picture. Ask yourself, if they make the same choice, does it mean they follow the pattern? That's why comprehension is everything. Please feed your mind with new words. You have to learn how to understand not everything, but only the portions that contain the answers. To be honest with you, some of you might feel insecure. However, if you are able to overcome your comprehension woes, then believe me, in the end, it's going to be a lot better. Your day becomes fragrant sorcery at its finest because now you know exactly what to do. It will allow you to overcome your fears. And I need you to be confident because confidence at the end of the day is a powerful aphrodisiac. When you are confident, your every charm is magnified. Well, let me tell you the answer is true if the passage and the statement are consistent with each other, but don't always expect to find the exact words in the passage and in the statement. Now, let's move on to false. Honestly, it's between false and not given that people are having problems with. So now let's take a look at false. Passage and statement are not consistent with each other. So don't always think that passage and statement are exact opposites, because like what I've said, they are not going to use exactly the same words all the time. Good for you if the passage and the statement are exact opposites. However, there are times when they play with words. And that's when your decision making, you have to be discerning in identifying the answer. So I'll give you an example this time. The passage tells us study destination choices are influenced by proximity to home. That's the factor. What about the statement? Numerous studies conducted in Britain and the United States show that the country of choice depends to a large extent on economic factors. Two factors have been mentioned. The factor in the passage is proximity, whereas the factor in the statement is economic. If you go back to the passage and the statement, both of them contain factors. It's just that proximity is not the same as economic. That's why the answer is false. I repeat, they may not be exact opposites, but because they are not consistent with each other, the answer is still false. Now, what about not given? 2 reasons why we say the answer is not given. Number 1, the passage does not contain the statement. So how do you know? This is when we recommend that you read everything. But let me clarify, I did not say absorb everything. Why is it important for you to read everything? So that you would know if the answer is not given. Class, what about the second reason if the answer is not given? There is an added information, there is an excess information in the statement that you cannot find in the passage. So now, what are we going to do? I'll give you a few examples. 3 examples of passage versus statement, and I need you to tell me whether the answer is true or false or not given. Here we go. I need your full attention. Let's begin. Example number 1. There are subversive elements in children's literature. Let me just repeat that. There are subversive elements in children's literature. Statement: adults often fail to recognize the subversive elements in books their children read. Ladies and gentlemen, people of the Philippines and the international community, will you please tell me, is the answer true or false or not given? Answer as if you are in the actual examination. Answer as if this is going to be your last exam. Is it true or false or not given? Once again, for those of you who are not able to get it, I'll read it. Passage: there are subversive elements in children's literature. Statement: adults often fail to recognize the subversive elements in books their children read. So Anthony said true. Edessa said not given. Shirley said false. Now, here's the conundrum, guys. The first 3 responses are totally different from each other. One thought that was true, another one thought it was false, and one attendee thought it's not given. Let's take a look at the other answers. Not given, true, false, true, true, true. Okay. The answer is, drum roll. The answer is not given. Those who said true or false are like, how come that's not given? Let me go back, guys. The passage tells us there are subversive elements in children's literature. The statement tells us adults often fail to recognize the subversive elements in books their children read. One by one. Subversive elements, that's something you can find in both the passage and in the statement. What about children's literature? That's exactly the same as books their children read. But what did I say? The words in the passage are not always the same words in this statement. So you have to be careful. You have to be discerning. For those who answered not given, the ones who got it right, tell me, which info there was just added to make the answer not given? Will you please tell me which part of the statement is considered the additional information which made the answer not given? Okay, Shirley got it right. The adults who often fail to recognize. This is how you do it. You don't just read and then make a wild guess. You have to dissect. That's what Niner lecturers are for. Credibility is everything, so we only get lecturers who haven't just taken the test but aced the examination. Why? Just because you're a native speaker doesn't mean you can teach well. Or just because you finished with a degree in English, that's not a guarantee that you can teach well. It's a matter of telling your students, in my experience, when I took the exam. So now, both the passage and statement contain children's literature and subversive elements, but the statement contains something that's not given in the passage, and that's adults who fail to recognize. Okay, for some of you, 1 out of 1. The others, 0 out of 1. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of your journey. Let's go to number 2. The others, time to redeem yourselves. Pay attention. Passage, there is an unrealistic view of money in children's literature. Statement, there should be a more realistic view of money in children's literature. So, what is the answer? Is it true or false or not given? I'll repeat. There is an unrealistic view versus there should be a more realistic view. What's the answer of the candidates? Okay, Daffy said false. Janella said true. What about the others? JB said true. Jenny said false. Carla said false. Burley, false. Kat, true. Maytan, false. Christina, false. Aldi, true. Why is it that I'm not stopping yet? Because so far, no one has gotten the correct answer. Vea, false. Janella, true. Jane, false. Karen, false. Sorry, guys. No one was able to get the correct answer. Let me explain why the answer is not given. And the others are saying, ay, not given na naman? Paano nangyari yun, sir? Okay, here we go. Learn it the 9.09er way. Dissection is the key. Let me go back. Passage. There is an unrealistic view of money. Statement. There should be a more realistic view of money. So what some people do, the moment they read the words unrealistic versus more realistic, they're thinking, unrealistic, realistic? Sir, they're opposites. Therefore, the answer is false. That's not how you do it. Go into detail. You cancel out. Both passage and the statement contain money. Both passage and the statement contain children's literature. Both passage and statement contain view. But what's the difference? The passage says there is an unrealistic view. In Tagalog, hindi daw makatotohanan. But what about the statement? There should be a more realistic view. Now tell me, which info makes the answer not given? The added information that made the statement not given. Which part? Janella said more. What about the others? Do the others have an input? Okay, while waiting for your answers to come. Okay, Janella said the word more. There you go. The statement says there should be a more realistic versus the passage there is an unrealistic. Sometimes it's best if you translate it in Tagalog para mas maintindihan. Ang sabi kasi ng passage, hindi daw makatotohanan. Now, the statement says dapat mas makatotohanan. The word dapat in English, there should be a more. That's the added info which made the answer not given. So it's not just a matter of asking yourself, is the passage consistent with the statement? Ask yourself, is there an extra info that makes the answer not given? That's the purpose of your coach. Not to mislead you, but to educate you, to enlighten you, to lead you to the right path. Well, it might be improbable for now, but if you're going to conquer it, victory is sweeter. Now, one last. The others, 2 out of 2. The others, 1 out of 2. The others, 0 out of 2. Your last chance. Pay attention. Here we go. Number 3. Passage. Okay, passage. Inland freight in United Kingdom is carried by road. Statement. Inland freight in United Kingdom is not carried by water. Here we go. Carried by road versus not carried by water. Fingers crossed. Is the answer true or false or not given? I'll repeat that. Carried by road versus not carried by water. What's your answer? True, false, or not given? Michelle said not given. John Ray, false. Let's wait for the other responses to come up. Marina said not given. Mary Grace, not given. Shirley said false. Albie, not given. Perhaps it's the moment of truth. Althea, not given. The answer is not given. So for the others who got it, hooray, not given. Why not given? The passage says carried by road. The statement says not carried by water. Class, what's the info that made it not given? Water. The passage does not say anything about water. Class, you don't assume. The others have this philosophy in mind. Sir, syempre, if it's carried by road, malamang, it's not carried by water. Auntie, there's still air. You don't limit the options to just road and water. Do not assume. Look at it face value. That's how you address the reading subtest. So, if you got 3 out of 3 correct answers, you're on your way to Australia, New Zealand, the ones that require the highest. Class, if you got 2 out of 3, well, you have a chance in UK and Ireland. If you got 1 out of 3, well, this is challenging for you right now, but what's the good news? This is not the actual exam. Whatever score you get here does not matter because there is only one thing that matters, and that's your grade in the actual examination. I'd rather you cry now. For as long as you do not cry when you get your IELTS result. So, we're taking our time. We're not in a hurry. We're not in a rush. What time is it, by the way?
2:30.
Oh, it's 2:30 already. We've been very talkative. But like what I've said, we want you guys to get it. Muscles are not made overnight. Champions are not born, are not created just like that. If you understand how you're supposed to do it, let me tell you, before, it was just a constellation, a pretty picture in the sky you're not meant to hold. But if you're able to apply these strategies, the ones that will assist your comprehension in the reading subtest, everything is within reach. We are 9.09er, will help you, guide you in this path towards IELTS and OET success. Some of you can easily get it in reading, but in writing and speaking, the national average is much lower than the required band score. That's why it's something that you have to look forward to. March 28, the free speaking masterclass at 7 p.m. And March 6, that's a Saturday, the free writing masterclass. So why is it that we're going to talk about writing towards the end of the series? Because this is where Filipinos are really having a difficult time. Sir Philip, would you like to add something before we entertain questions and before we're going to announce the winner of our, the first winner of our February promo, the refund of the review fee? Meanwhile, we're not yet done, guys. Ask the questions that you want you want us to address. Think of the questions related to the reading subtest, okay? Not listening, not writing, not speaking. And by the way, I've mentioned this in the very beginning of our masterclass. How many of you are interested in Sunday one-on-one coaching? If you're interested, better comment and please indicate the time that you want to be coached on a Sunday. Please let us know. We value your comments. We value your suggestions. Sir Fritz, by the way, told me yesterday he's done recording the pronunciation classes, so we'll include these in your dashboard. And towards the end of the month, we're going to upload brand new accent neutralization content on your dashboard. Come March, we'll include new lectures like common mistakes or content development, skills enhancement to your dashboard. We're celebrating our 14th anniversary in April. Woohoo! 14 years. So we're still thinking, what can we possibly offer you in April, guys? So, yes to Sunday, but tell us, please, what time on Sunday would you like to have the one-on-one coaching session? Karen said, thank you, sir. You're welcome, Karen. Did you find the last hour and 30 minutes worthwhile? Let us know, because you are our boss at Niner. Joe, what are the question examples for false answers? Well, they're in the orange book, okay? This is a free master class. We usually devote 3 hours for IELTS reading alone, 3 hours for OET reading alone. Well, this is free content. The lecturers will definitely talk about everything in detail. Guided reading together with the answers. Okay. False is when the passage and the statement are not consistent with each other. But the answer is not given if there's an added information in the statement which you cannot find in the passage, okay? It's the added info. That is the one that determines whether the answer is false or not given. The added detail. Okay, Danica wants to have one-on-one coaching on Sunday at 2 p.m. onwards. Rialyn, same time on Sunday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. talaga, te. Let's try. But for our Middle East market and the nocturnal Filipinos working in the Philippines, would you like to have 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. one-on-one coaching for writing and speaking? Just let us know. Because we value your comments, we value your suggestions. John Michael, 8 p.m. Philippine time. Ethel, Sunday, 3 p.m. onwards. Shell, helpful info. Thank you. See you on the next FB Live. Okay. While you are answering while you're asking us some questions, perhaps it's time for us to congratulate the winner of our February promo. So we're going to announce 5 lucky winners for the month. The first winner enrolled just this week. Okay? What's the basis for choosing the winners? Everyone who enrolls as a group of 3 or more persons automatically qualify for the February promo. So weekly, we're going to refund a review fee. The review fee worth 3,666 pesos for group promo. And the grand winner, we're going to announce on March 1, will come from the group with the most number of members. So the winner for this week, they enrolled as a group of 4 persons. The leader, The one who coordinated with 9.09er is going to get a full refund. Congratulations to Maria Esa Monica Kaing of Valenzuela City. Esa Monica Kaing, if you are watching us right now, please message us. Let us know your bank account details or how you prefer to receive the full refund of your review fee worth 3,666 pesos. So far, their group is in the running for the next top model chart. Their group is in the running for the grand prize winner of our February promo. But if there is a group in the coming days with 5 enrollees, so we're going to pick the winner from that group of 5. If there's a group with like 6 members or 7 members, then the winner will come from the group with the most number of members. Do we have more questions? It's more of thank yous and wows and congratulations. Well, if you're too shy to ask these questions, well, you know what to do. You might want to email us. That's training@nineronlinereview.com. Or number 2, you might want to message us directly on our Facebook account. Which account? Like, there are so many Niner accounts on Facebook. This account right here, the one that we're using for our Facebook live session. So, if you want to get more insights, because this one just lasted for 1 hour and 30 minutes. Tomorrow, the head of our Niner online review team, Sir Brian Martin Shawson, will be doing a free online class, not via Facebook Live, but via Zoom, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. February 14, Valentine's Day, 6 to 9 p.m. Let's make your Valentine's Day worthwhile. Let's postpone your date. Well, if your date cannot help you pass the examination, we can help you pass the examination. Let's make the most out of your time. How to avail writing for OET? You message us. We'll send you the packages for OET writing. You can have writing correction every day, from as early as 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And hopefully, we're going to announce that soon until 1 a.m. Watch out for 9.09er convenience store, Char, 24/7. Okay, more thank yous here. If you don't have anything else to ask, we'll just wait for those direct messages. Once again, this is Sir Irvin, who got 9.0 in IELTS speaking, 9.0 in reading, 9.0 in listening, and 8 in writing. And Sir Philip.
Hello there. I think, thank you very much for the time that you spent with us today. We understand that you're busy people and you're only making time for a review out of the many responsibilities that you have. Hopefully that you found the session informative and educational. And perhaps if you're not yet part of our community, then maybe you could consider joining and enrolling and being a student. These things that we discussed very briefly, that Sir Irvin discussed very briefly during the session, are just the tip of the iceberg. We spend quite a lot more time during classes examining the text and rationalizing everything, matching keywords, trying to tease out the paraphrase and what's another way to do this. It's a lot more involved process. So hopefully you found this something that is to your liking and you would consider maybe joining us. Thank you very much for the time that you've spent, Sir Irvin.
That's Sir Philip, who got the perfect grade in IELTS and OET, listening, reading, and speaking, and the second highest grade in IELTS and OET writing. Once again, we are 9.09er, ready to serve. We are at your service. God bless. See you on Feb 28.